Part 1, The Day the Air Went Still. It began at exactly 9:17 a.m. on a Tuesday. Not with a bang. Not with an earthquake. Not even with a flicker of the lights. Just a strange, almost imperceptible pause in the world. Claire Mallory was in the bakery, sliding trays of cinnamon rolls onto the counter, when the radio cut to static mid-song. She didn't think much of it, signal in Fairford had always been patchy. But then her phone buzzed once, froze, and went black. The Wi-Fi icon on the cafe's little tablet blinked, then disappeared entirely. A minute later, an old man named Howard stepped inside, looking pale. "TV's gone," he said, voice low. "All of it. No picture. Just snow." Claire shrugged. "Storm maybe?" He shook his head. "Sky's clear." By 9:30, Fairford's main street was humming, not with technology, but with people. Farmers, shopkeepers, high school kids, everyone had left what they were doing to gather outside. The sheriff's cruiser idled at the corner, its radio hissing with nothing but white noise. Claire stepped out into the street, brushing flour from her apron. That was when she noticed the stillness. No wind. No birds. Even the faint hum of the power lines had gone silent. Then someone, she didn't see who, pointed up. At first, she thought it was just a shadow from a passing cloud. But there were no clouds. Above the thin summer haze, directly over Fairford, hung something so vast and faint that the eye had to adjust to see it. It wasn't a blimp. It wasn't a plane. It wasn't even shaped like anything she knew, more like the belly of some immense, pale creature, its edges fading into the brightness of the sky. It didn't move. It didn't shimmer or hum. It simply was, silent and impossibly still, as if it had always been there and only now decided to be noticed. A child's voice cut through the murmuring crowd. "Why is it watching us?" No one answered. Part 2, The Sheriff's Attempt. Sheriff Ron Hayworth had been in Fairford his whole life, and nothing, not the floods of '86, not the tornado scare of '94, had ever made him feel this unsettled. He leaned against the hood of his cruiser, sunglasses hiding his eyes as he stared upward. From the ground, the thing didn't seem to have edges, the sky just changed where it began, a subtle gradient that made his brain want to misinterpret it as cloud cover. But the longer he looked, the more his chest tightened. He pressed the mic on his shoulder. "Dispatch, this is Hayworth. You copy?" Static. He tried the dash radio. Same thing. Even his backup handheld gave nothing but a hiss. Ron turned to the crowd. "All right, folks, let's keep calm. Could be atmospheric interference. Could be." He stopped, realizing that half the town wasn't even listening. Their gazes were fixed upward, jaws slack, as if pulled by invisible strings. Claire stepped closer to him. "You think it's a ship?" she asked quietly. He hesitated. "Don't know. Don't care to find out." "Somebody's already trying," she said, nodding toward the hill at the edge of town. Ron followed her gaze. A few of the high school boys had hauled out an old telescope from the school's astronomy club. One was peering through it, another shielding his eyes with a hand. The third was waving frantically for someone to come look. Ron started toward them, but before he could reach the hill, the boy at the telescope jerked back like he'd been burned. The others asked what he'd seen, but he just shook his head and stumbled down the slope, pale as paper. "Son?" Ron called after him. "What is it?" The boy didn't answer. He kept walking, eyes locked on the ground, lips moving soundlessly. By the time Ron caught up, he realized the kid was whispering the same phrase over and over. "It knows. It knows. It knows." Ron felt the hairs rise on the back of his neck. From somewhere far above, deep within that pale underbelly in the sky, there came a single, low sound, like the deep moan of a foghorn, stretched until it barely qualified as a noise at all. The sound didn't fade. It grew. Part 3, The First Sign. The sound was not just heard, it was felt. A tremor in the ribs, a flutter in the gut. Windows rattled in their frames. Dogs began barking and then, just as suddenly, went silent. Claire clutched her father's arm. "It's talking," she whispered, though Ron doubted any human tongue could produce a sound like that. Across Main Street, people were holding their heads, grimacing. One woman dropped to her knees, pressing both palms against her ears. The low tone slid lower, a vibrating throb that seemed to crawl through bone. Then, silence. No one moved. Even the wind had stopped. Ron realized, with a prickling dread, that the quiet wasn't normal. It wasn't just the absence of the tone, it was the absence of everything. No distant highway hum. No cicadas. Not even a faint rustle of leaves. "Okay," Ron said slowly, scanning the crowd. "Everybody, inside. Now." But as people began backing away, several gasped and pointed upward. A thin shaft of light was piercing down from the mass above, faint at first, then sharpening until it looked solid, like a pillar of glass descending through the air. It touched the ground at the far end of Main Street, exactly where the town's old water tower stood. The instant it made contact, the rusted metal began to glow. Not with heat, but with an inner luminescence, as though the light were filling it from the inside out. Then, before anyone could react, the glow pulsed, once, twice, and spread outward through the ground in shimmering ripples. The first ripple hit a parked car. Its paint blistered and peeled in seconds, revealing bare metal beneath. The second ripple washed over a row of mailboxes, and the steel warped, bending into strange, organic shapes, as though trying to imitate vines. "Back," Ron yelled. "Everyone back." Claire grabbed his sleeve. "It's marking something." Ron's voice was tight. "Or it's changing something." They turned toward the hill, where the boy with the telescope had stood earlier. The grass there now swayed in unnatural unison, as if caught in a wind no one could feel. Somewhere deep inside Ron's instincts, a voice he'd learned to trust, was telling him, this isn't random. It knows exactly what it's doing. Part 4, The Boy on the Hill. The shimmering ripples slowed, then faded. The silence still hung over the town like a suffocating blanket. Ron's gaze locked on the hill. The boy was still there, but his telescope was gone. He stood perfectly still, arms at his sides, staring straight at the hovering shape above the clouds. "Is that Caleb?" Claire murmured. It was. Caleb Barnes, 11 years old, son of the high school biology teacher. A quiet kid, the sort who read books about astronomy while other kids played video games. Something about his posture made Ron's skin crawl. Caleb didn't fidget. He didn't blink. He didn't even breathe visibly. "Caleb," Ron shouted. His voice carried unnaturally far in the still air, as though the silence itself was amplifying it. The boy didn't react. Ron started toward the hill, ignoring Claire's hand gripping his arm. The grass crunched under his boots, too dry, though it had rained just 2 days ago. When he reached halfway up, Caleb finally moved. Slowly, almost mechanically, his head tilted down to look at Ron. His eyes, dark brown normally, now had a faint, silvery sheen, like moonlight on water. "Caleb," Ron said, keeping his voice calm. "We need to get you inside, okay? Whatever's happening, it's not safe out here." The boy spoke, but it wasn't his voice. It was a layered, resonant tone that seemed to come from above rather than his mouth. "Not here for you." Ron froze. "What?" "Not here for you," the voice repeated, calm and final. "Here for what was left behind." Before Ron could respond, Caleb's gaze shifted upward again. The pillar of light narrowed, drawing back toward the sky, but a single thread of it remained connected to Caleb's chest, as if tethering him to the vast shadow above. The boy's lips twitched in a ghost of a smile. "It waits." Then the light snapped away, and Caleb collapsed like a puppet with its strings cut. "Do you want me to push right into Part 5 where the search for what was left behind begins?" Part 5, Left Behind. Ron dropped to his knees beside Caleb, checking for a pulse. The boy's skin was clammy, his breathing shallow, but he was alive. Claire scrambled up the hill, clutching Ron's shoulder as if afraid he'd vanish too. "Get him inside," she urged. "Now." They carried Caleb down, his limbs loose and unresponsive. By the time they reached the porch, he stirred faintly, mumbling words that didn't make sense, syllables that rolled like static in a language neither recognized. Ron laid him on the couch. Claire fetched a blanket, but her hands trembled so badly she nearly dropped it. "That voice," she said. "That wasn't him." "No," Ron agreed. "And whatever it was, it's not gone." The stillness outside felt heavier now, as if the silent thing in the clouds had shifted its attention. Every shadow in the room seemed sharper, edges more defined, like the world was holding its breath. Caleb's eyelids fluttered open. For a heartbeat, his eyes glinted silver again. His lips moved. "Don't let it find it." "Find what?" Ron pressed. Caleb swallowed, struggling. "The fragment. It's here. Since before me." Before Ron could ask more, his gaze darted toward the hall mirror. He stiffened. In the reflection, Ron saw himself and Claire. But where Caleb should have been lying on the couch, there was only an empty dent in the cushions. "Claire." She followed his gaze. Her face went pale. They turned toward the couch. Caleb was still there, breathing, eyes closed. But in the mirror, that place was wrong. The dent was deeper, like something heavier was sitting there. And slowly, terrifyingly, a dark, almost transparent hand rose from the invisible figure's lap in the reflection. It pressed a single finger to its lips. Part 6, The Fragment. Claire yanked the throw blanket over the mirror. "What did you see?" she demanded, voice shaking. Ron kept his eyes on the covered glass. It wasn't Caleb. It looked like a person, but wrong. Like it was heavier than it should be. And it told us to be quiet. Caleb stirred again, coughing. His voice was hoarse, but more himself now. "You can't let it get the fragment. If it does, it won't just watch anymore. It'll open." Ron crouched beside him. "Where is it? What is it?" Caleb's gaze slid toward the far corner of the room, where an old cedar chest sat under a stack of quilts. "It's inside. Been here for years. My granddad. He found it after the crash." "Crash?" Claire repeated. "Not a plane," Caleb said. "Something else. They never found the rest of it. Just this piece. It hums, if you get too close. Makes you dream strange things." Ron and Claire exchanged a look. They crossed to the chest. The lid creaked as Ron lifted it, releasing the smell of cedar and mothballs. Inside, beneath a mess of yellowed newspaper, was a metal box about the size of a lunch pail. Its surface shimmered faintly, like oil on water, even in the dim light. When Ron reached for it, a low vibration rolled through the room. The air felt heavier, thicker. From outside came a sound, not a normal sound, but a shift in the silence, as if something vast had moved above the clouds. Claire backed up, eyes wide. "It knows." Ron closed the box quickly, but the vibration didn't stop. It grew, spreading through the floorboards, into their bones. Caleb sat up, clutching his head. "It's awake now," he said. "It was sleeping until you touched it. And now it's looking for the rest of itself." Somewhere in the distance, a single dog barked. The sound was sharp, panicked. Then, abruptly, it cut off. The silence outside deepened into something almost physical. Part 7, The First Move. The vibration shifted into a deep, slow thrum, like a pulse that didn't belong to anything human. It seemed to come from the clouds themselves. Claire pressed her hands over her ears, but it didn't help. The sound wasn't just in the air, it was inside them. Outside, the streetlights flickered. One by one, they went dark. Ron crossed to the window and peered out. The houses along the street were shadows now, their shapes barely outlined in the pale glow from the cloud cover. Except, he realized, it wasn't cloud cover anymore. The sky looked solid. Almost like the belly of some colossal creature. Movement rippled across it. Not lightning, more like something adjusting its weight. Caleb stumbled to his feet. "We have to move. Now." "Where?" Ron asked. "There's no signal, no power, and that thing is everywhere." Claire had gone pale. "It's not moving closer. It's leaning." They all looked up. A massive depression was forming in the sky, as if something above was pressing down. The air grew colder by the second. Frost began to creep across the inside of the window pane. Then came the sound, soft at first, then rising, a faint tapping. Not on the roof. On the glass. Ron turned toward the mirror, the one he'd covered earlier. The blanket shifted slightly, as if something underneath was pressing out from the other side. "No," Caleb said, backing away. "Don't touch it." The blanket slipped to the floor. The reflection in the mirror wasn't the room anymore. It showed the street outside, but wrong, longer, stretched, and empty except for one figure standing directly under the center of the darkened sky. It wore no face, only a smooth, black surface where one should be. It raised a hand and pointed. The vibration cut out instantly. For the first time since the signals vanished, there was absolute, weightless silence. And then, without warning, the figure stepped forward, through the glass. Part 8, Through the glass. It didn't break the mirror. It didn't push through, either. It was as if the glass had briefly turned to liquid, letting the figure slide forward like a shadow into the room. Claire gasped and stumbled back, knocking over the lamp. The bulb flared once, then died. Ron's throat tightened. "Don't move," he whispered, though he wasn't sure why. The thing was tall, at least 7 feet, and impossibly thin, its limbs longer than they should be, fingers tapering to needle-like points. The blackness of its face seemed to swallow light, pulling at the edges of the room like a hole in reality. It tilted its head, not with curiosity, but with the weight of something ancient trying to remember what humans were. Caleb found his voice first. "What do you want?" The figure didn't answer. Instead, it turned its head toward the window, toward the solid mass of sky pressing down on the town. And then, without looking at any of them, it raised one finger to its face as if shushing something they couldn't hear. The vibration returned, but different this time, short bursts, like coded signals. The walls trembled with each pulse. From outside came movement, fast, skittering, too many limbs. Shadows darted through the frost-covered street. Some crawled along the ground, others moved vertically up walls, ignoring gravity entirely. Claire's breathing hitched. "There's more." The figure finally looked back at them. And in the surface of its black face, they didn't see themselves, only the view of that other street from before, filled with hundreds of dark silhouettes staring up at the sky. Then, slowly, it extended a hand toward Claire. Ron stepped between them. "No." The figure froze. The pulse stopped. And somewhere deep inside that strange, crushing silence, a new sound emerged, like the distant crack of something massive splitting apart. The sky was opening. Part 9, When the Sky Broke. The crack wasn't thunder. It was deeper, older, like the groan of something impossibly heavy being pried open after eons. They all turned toward the window. The clouds above weren't moving, they were peeling back, layer by layer, exposing something far darker than night. A jagged wound split across the horizon, spilling a faint light that wasn't sunlight, moonlight, or anything earthly. It was the color of ash and bone, making the snow outside glow a sickly hue. The tall figure in the room tilted its head upward, as if listening. Then came the sound. Not a roar, not a scream, something in between. A voice too big to belong to anything with a mouth, reverberating inside their skulls rather than their ears. The words weren't in English, or in any language they knew, but still, they understood. "It is time." The figure lowered its head and stepped backward toward the mirror. The glass rippled again, but this time, it didn't vanish into it. It stopped halfway, its torso still in their world. Its free hand extended toward Ron now, not Claire. Ron shook his head. "No. Not me. I'm not." The vibration in the air became a low, violent hum, rattling the picture frames, making the floorboards flex. Outside, the crawling things froze, all facing the same direction, the widening split in the sky. Through the crack, shapes moved, colossal, slow, graceful in a way that made Ron's stomach knot. Limbs the size of city blocks. Eyes like frozen suns. One of them leaned down toward the tier, and Ron knew, without knowing how, that it was looking for him. The figure at the mirror suddenly lunged forward, its hand wrapping around Ron's wrist. Cold burned through him, colder than ice, colder than space. Caleb shouted something, but his voice was swallowed by the hum. The figure's grip tightened. The mirror behind it was no longer a reflection, it was a window. And through it, Ron saw the same sky, but without clouds. Without sunlight. Without anything human at all. The pull began. Part 10, The Pull. Ron dug his heels into the floor, but the boards groaned and shifted under the force dragging him. The cold from the figure's grip spread through his arm, into his chest, slowing his heartbeat until each thud felt miles apart. Caleb grabbed Ron's other arm. Claire wrapped her arms around Caleb's waist, all three of them straining backward. The mirror's surface warped and flexed like liquid metal, pulling in waves that yanked Ron forward inch by inch. Outside, the crawling things began to climb the walls of the house, their movements jerky, insect-like. Their eyes glowed faintly, all fixed on Ron. "Let him go," Caleb roared, his knuckles white on Ron's sleeve. The figure tilted its head, and the sound returned, low, resonant, filling their bones. "He belongs there." "No, he doesn't." Claire's voice cracked, a mix of fury and terror. "He's not going anywhere with you." The hum deepened, vibrating the air until Claire's teeth ached. From the split in the clouds, one of the colossal shapes extended an arm downward, its shadow covering the entire neighborhood. Ron realized with horror that the hand had too many fingers, and they were curling toward their house. The figure at the mirror yanked hard. Caleb nearly lost his grip. Ron's vision began to blur, the edges of the room warping into the same pale nothingness beyond the mirror. Then, bang! The front door slammed open, and a blinding beam of light tore through the room. Someone was standing there, their silhouette sharp against the glow. The crawling things on the walls shrieked and dropped away instantly. The figure at the mirror recoiled, the grip on Ron faltering. "Get away from him!" the newcomer barked. The voice was steady, commanding, someone used to giving orders. The figure hissed, a sound like glass under pressure, and began to retreat into the mirror. But not before whispering directly into Ron's mind. "This is not over." Part 11, The Quiet That Follows. The light clicked off, leaving Ron blinking in the sudden dimness. The stranger stepped forward, a tall woman in a weather-beaten jacket, a satchel slung across her chest. She swept the room with quick, assessing eyes before shutting the door. "You have about 30 seconds before it tries again," she said flatly. "We need to block the glass." Claire snapped into motion, dragging a blanket from the couch and tossing it over the mirror. The hum cut out instantly, replaced by the ragged breathing of 3 terrified people. Ron's knees buckled, and Caleb caught him, lowering him into a chair. The woman knelt beside him. "Did it speak to you?" Ron hesitated, but her gaze told him lying wasn't an option. It said, "This isn't over." She nodded grimly. "Then you've been marked. They don't just let go." "Who are you?" Claire demanded, still gripping the blanket over the mirror like it might leap off. The woman opened her satchel, pulling out a device that looked like a cross between a compass and an old radio. It ticked softly, the needle jittering toward the covered mirror. "My name's Mara. I work for let's just call it a containment unit. We've been tracking this thing for months." Caleb frowned. "The thing in the sky?" "Yes." Mara's tone left no room for doubt. "It's not a ship, or at least not in the way you think. It's a tether point, an anchor between here and where they come from." She tapped the mirror. Every reflective surface connected to it is a door. This one was opened tonight. By accident or not, doesn't matter. Ron shivered, his skin still prickling from the figure's grip. "And if the anchor pulls all the way through?" Mara's expression tightened. "Then there won't be a sky anymore. Just them." Outside, the clouds pulsed once, faintly, like something enormous had just taken a breath. Part 12, The Anchor Breaks. Mara set the device on the floor, its ticking quickening like a panicked heartbeat. From her satchel she pulled out a wrapped bundle and unfolded it to reveal a hammer, old, iron-headed, etched with symbols none of them recognized. "This is the only way to sever the link," she said, moving toward the shrouded mirror. "But once I start, it will know." The room felt too small, the air charged like before a lightning strike. Caleb took a step back, pulling Ron with him. "How bad?" Mara gave a humorless smile. "Let's just say, keep your eyes off the glass no matter what you hear." She tore the blanket away. The mirror's surface was black as oil, swirling faintly. Deep inside, shapes moved, tall, wrong-limbed silhouettes pacing like predators in a cage. One stopped. Tilted its head. "Here we go," Mara muttered, and swung the hammer. The impact was deafening. The mirror shuddered but didn't break. Instead, the black surface rippled, and a hand, long, pale, jointed too many times, shot out, grasping the hammer's head. Ron yelled. Caleb lunged forward, but Mara planted her feet and pulled hard, wrenching the weapon free. "Second strike!" she barked, slamming it down again. This time the glass screamed. A sound so sharp it cut into their skulls. Cracks spiderwebbed across the surface, light bleeding from them, light that felt alive. The thing inside pressed against the fractures, its featureless face pushing close enough to almost emerge. Mara swung a third time. The mirror exploded inward with a burst of icy wind. The blackness collapsed on itself, folding and twisting until it winked out entirely. Silence. They stood frozen, ears ringing. The only sound was the faint patter of glass on the floor. Outside, the clouds above the town shifted, thinned, and for the first time in days, a patch of blue sky appeared. Mara leaned on the hammer, breathing hard. "It's gone," she said, though her voice carried a shadow of doubt. Ron glanced at the broken mirror and thought he saw, just for a heartbeat, his own reflection. "Smile at him." Part 13, The Blue That Lies. The town moved on as if nothing had happened. Power lines hummed again, phones buzzed, radios crackled back to life. People stepped out of their houses, blinking at the sudden sunshine. Nobody asked why it felt wrong. Caleb, Ron, and Mara met a week later at the diner by the highway. The coffee tasted bitter, like burnt metal. Mara stirred hers without drinking. "It should have been over," Caleb said. "The sky's back. The thing's gone. So why do I keep waking up at 3:07 every morning?" Mara didn't look up. "Because it isn't gone." Ron froze halfway through a bite of pie. What do you mean? We smashed the mirror. That mirror was just an anchor, she said quietly. Something it used to keep its footing here. Breaking it didn't kill it, it just scattered it. Caleb's stomach turned. Scattered it where? She finally looked at them, eyes dull and tired. Reflections. Any surface that can hold an image, windows, water, even your eyes if you're unlucky. Ron laughed nervously. So what, it's everywhere now. Nobody answered. The bell over the diner door jingled, and a family walked in, a man, a woman, and a little girl holding a cheap handheld mirror. She was talking to it in a whisper, giggling at whatever answer she thought she heard. Mara's face went pale. Don't look, she said sharply. Too late. Caleb glanced, just a flicker, and in the girl's mirror he thought he saw something leaning over her shoulder, long-limbed, jointed wrong, head tilted like it was listening. The girl smiled at him as they passed, still cradling the mirror like a secret. When the door closed, Mara shoved her coffee aside and stood. It's not waiting above the clouds anymore, she said. Now it's waiting for us to look. Outside, the sky stayed a perfect, harmless blue. But in every puddle by the roadside, something rippled and tilted its head.